Hello there reason people, PoohBear here and welcome to my channel. And today we're going to be looking at it's just a high level overview of Robotic Beans devices. I've noticed they've got a sale on, so I thought, hey, let's just do a very quick video. I'm actually also going to be demonstrating a number of these devices actually in action, so I'm not going to do like a big in-depth dive, but one of the stacks I'm going to show, which I think a number of people will find interesting, is the fact that I can take my Midi controller and it doesn't matter which button I press on it, or depending which button I press on it will be depending on which pattern I'm going to actually select out of a player device. Most of the time, obviously, the pattern selects are controlled via a knob, but I'm actually going to control them via different buttons, so I can very quickly jump from, say, pattern 7 to pattern 2, which obviously people probably find quite useful in a live environment, or if there's actually just sort of trying to mix and record a session live within reason. What I've got in front of me at the moment is the Robotic Bean toolkit bundle. You can buy all these obviously products separately. They actually also put it in a bundle. At the top we've got the Select CV switch, which is an 18 1-out device, and if you follow my channel, you know I use this device all the time. I use it in my projects all the time. It's an absolutely fantastic device. Let's see if I can come up here and zoom in a little bit. Here we go. Even though we've got little things like these labels of gate and CV, at the end of the day, you can put any kind of CV signals in these. It doesn't matter if you swap them around, as long as you just swap them around at the back. But it's just basically any kind of CV signal can go through this, and you can get it out. Obviously, you can control it via CV to select the different ones. And I use this really as a voltage stepper, and you'd see me use it a lot, along with its companion. I call it its companion, which is the CV8X4, because them two combinations I use all the time. And guess what, in my demonstration I'll be using them together as well. Next down we've got the Metrotone, which is obviously a metronome. I think on the forum the other day someone's asking about, hey, I want to have a metronome going out on a different audio channel for their hardware so someone can hear that and no one else can hear it. So, yeah, so this sort of thing will allow you to do that. You can just obviously wire this up and push it right out to the hardware out if you wish to. The funny thing is, with this particular device, I actually use the gates stuff. I've used that in the past in the CV world because it is actually pulsing stuff out. So if I was to just solo that and hit play here, I think you can see we can actually get it pulsing out. At the moment, if I just remove that wire there, and I'm just going to hide everything else, here it is. And so I've actually used this data in the past, and I've for generative projects, that's what I've done that for, rather than actually as the metronome. But hey, there we go. Next in line, we've got what's called the compare. The great thing about the compare is as you can see, I can overlay up to 4 signals at the same time. I'm just going to turn that one off and clean this up a little bit. So what is this actually doing here? Let's just scroll this up to the top. I've actually got this little LFO. I've got myself a sawtooth. As you can see, the sawtooth here. In fact, let me just sort of cut some things out. So here's my sawtooth here. I'm now going to bring in a sine wave, but this sine wave is actually being modulated by this sawtooth, and you can actually see it. So you can actually see how this sine wave is actually growing in amplitude as my sawtooth goes up, and obviously by overlaying it, you can actually see how it's really going. And then finally, I've got this real funny, nice little squiggly line, and that is actually a triangle, which is being modulated by the ramp is modulating the sine wave, so it's modulating the triangle, and this is what we end up with. So it's the fact that you can overlay these stuff, and I actually find that quite handy. But the other big features I really enjoy from this device, and obviously we've got different overlays that you can view, including the max and the min and the sum of the product, which are quite handy ones, is we've got a scale and we've got an offset built into here, so we can actually scale and offset stuff which we can physically see and then pump that data straight back out again. And that's what I use it for heavily. Again, I've used this in quite a bit with the dual CV source, where I actually put latch data in and I can invert it and offset it, and I've got myself some gate data. It's quite a handy little thing. I do like that. Down here we've got this trigger multiplexer. I remember when this came out, it sort of made me laugh a little bit because I thought, hey, I built myself one of these, but admittedly it was massive because I had to use up to 16, the CV8X4s had to have 16 of them. I used it in conjunction with the select CV switch to switch things around, but it was a massive thing. And the thing that made me laugh more than anything is I had this massive combinator and I'll only actually use 1 or 2 of the ports of it at a time. So having it nice and compact is absolutely brilliant. As you can see, this has got 16 ports, so you could just wire up to 16 of the outs of the Kong straight into this, and then you can convert the gate data into particular notes, and then you can use that to control samplers or whatever else you want. It is quite a handy little device, and again you'd actually see this in action in a little bit. Next we've got this time slider, which is quite interesting because it allows me to take I might have some audio which it's playing a bit too early, so with this obviously I can push it and I can make it play later, so that's quite straightforward. This is a very simple device, but it's quite a clever device, and I like clever devices. I'm just going to drag it down here so I can zoom in a little bit. Let's see if we can get whatever, that's what I want on the screen. And then we can obviously take our equivalently of taking our audio and push it back in time, but we can't really push it back in time. So what happens when we push this, push this to sooner? Well, what's really happening is that piece of data is still in the same place. It doesn't matter where this is really. This piece of data, well, it's going this way, that's particular. Doesn't matter where I'm putting this data actually stays in place, and what we're doing is we're taking our other note and gate data and we're actually delaying it, and we're moving that forward in time. So we can't go backwards, but we can push and delay things to move forward in time. And if you look at when I'm actually moving this up and down, you can actually see down here on the delay comp it going up and down, because that's all we're effectively doing is delaying all the other lanes so it's in time with this one. It's quite handy device, and it saves having to go in all the time into the main sequencer and nudge things around. You can do some nice little simple little bits of nudging with this. The last things in the toolbox is the CV to audio converters and audio to CV converters. I do use these. I actually use them quite a bit, and again I've got an example where you can see me using them. I don't use them for hardware because of originally I wouldn't say they were designed specifically for hardware, but if you've got hardware, especially modular devices, you can obviously take CV out of reason, push it through audio and put that out to your hardware devices. I actually use them internally, mainly with Voltage Modular, and I'll show you how I use these. Yes, you have Thor where you can convert CV to audio and audio to CV. However, Thor has some limits on it. These don't have them limits on it, and more to the point, I've got 8 going one way, 8 coming the other way, and they are very, very compact, whereas with Thor I end up having loads of Thors all over the place, and it starts to get a little bit messy. Let's see if I can zoom out. Hey, there we go. A little bit further down, let's see what have we got going on here. This is actually one of their patches, Robotic Beans. This is elementary. This is like a gating device. It comes out all your different kind of logics for gates, and this particular template happens to be wired up to a trigger multiplexer, which I've sat on top of their modeling synthesizer resonance. This is a great little synth. You probably, again, if you follow my channel, you've probably noticed I actually used 24 of these in an NC project. Being at the fact that they're a modeling synth, they're always worth, whenever I hear the word modeling synth, I always go and have a little investigation, because it's not just another wavetable synth or another subtractive synth. It's a model synth. They tend to be a little bit specialized, and I do actually like the sounds which come out of it, because you end up getting a very, very kind of realistic sound. So don't think of your big fat sawtooth trance sounds or anything like that. No, but you can get some real nice sort of quite authentic kind of sounds coming out of them. And of course I love the fact that we're getting these authentic sounds which are actually synthesized and they're not sampled or anything. And in fact we should be able to, if I just soloed that, yeah, we should be able to actually see that a little bit in action. So as I say, all the gates are playing, being converted into notes and playing And just by changing the engine very, very quick, without any other parameters, you can hear, you know, it changes the sound of this quite a bit. But when you start getting a bit of modulation onto this device, it's, yeah, you get some really nice, interesting sounds out of it. If we move on, this is the stack which actually builds out my pattern selector, so I can use different buttons, and we'll go through this stack in a little bit. Over here, I've got some, we've actually got the audio to CV actually in action, talking to Voltage Modular, which we'll have a look at. And we've got some Euclids here, which is actually sending data, which is going through the audio to CV, which is then going on to the Voltage Modular, which is actually playing different drum modules with inside that. I've also got some LFO set up inside Voltage Modular, which is coming out and driving the density patterns of the Euclid. Funny thing is, the Euclid and Euclidium, I think of this as old school and this is new school. And over here we've got note recorder, which I think of old school. We've got sequences here, which I think of as new school. By the way, new school doesn't mean it's better than old school. One of the nice things about the old school stuff is it's absolutely, oh sorry, I just hit the wrong button altogether there. I was meant to be hitting that button. It's absolutely full of CV ports on the back, so we've got loads of control what we can do, and obviously with the newer stuff we don't really get that. But saying that, the ports that actually have put on these CV ports on what we've got, they're actually really are quite handy. A lot of player devices are really plain, so at least we've got some things, and they're very useful things. Again, I don't know, say that video recently where I was using sequences and see 168 of these I was using, so obviously I was using little bits on the back to do all kinds of bits and bobs. So yeah, it is quite handy. But yeah, the old school stuff still use a lot, and I find it very handy. And as you can see here, this is audio's coming out of this device, converting it to CV, and here it is going into the density. And a little bit further down, you can see I'm taking all this gate data, converting it into the audio. The audio is actually now going into the Voltage Modular. We can open up Voltage Modular. Here we go. Here's all my audio sources, which is still a CV signal. You know, don't think of audio as just pure audio. We can use that audio signal as CV, and I'm using it to trigger some different devices. I've got sort of kicks, I've got some hi-hats, and I've also got some probability gates. So they're coming in, going into my probability gate and working out, am I going to play a cowbell and some other devices in here. And here's that LFO, which I was talking about, going through an attenuator, and they're going through this little DOBS device, which is just doing an offset on it. And I'm taking them signals, pushing them out, so just pushing them as box standard audio out. I keep going to push the tab key to close these things down. It's not, is it? It's because it's all the wires. Yeah, so I'm pushing it out, as I said, and then I'm coming across and I'm changing the density here. So that's quite a nice little thing. I've just noticed everything's on mute, so let me come in, click that off. If not, later on I'm going to do something and think, hey, it's not working. Why isn't that working? Over here we've got our, I say, the old school note recorder. I will admit I don't use that as much. You know, it's quite interesting. Euclid is something I do fire off quite a bit, as well as Euclidium. Since I've got sequences, well, to be honest, yeah, since I've got sequences, I haven't really played with that many more different sequences, because this one does everything I really need it to do. I use this for creating my drum patterns. I don't use the drum sequence, I use this. And I just use this so much. It's just such a great device. You've got, you know, many different ways you can actually record the data into it. I mean, you hit record and you can do your step, you can do it live. I can actually record other devices going on, so I can record the results of other devices into this. You know, it's fantastic. And a little bit later on, you're going to see you're not just stuck with, hey, I'm going to do myself a box standard pattern, which I've got down here. I've got this pattern, but then I'm actually using this sequences and these notes to transpose this around quite easily. So even though you can put yourself a pattern in very quickly, you can obviously change what that pattern's doing and transpose it around. So it's a very powerful step sequencer, and I do absolutely love it. As you can hear, I'm raving about it. The note recorder, as I say, was old school, and it's something I used quite a lot. One of the nice features that the old school still has is this direction, so we can change the direction and the order of how we're doing it. More than likely, because this is a player device, is one of the reasons why this doesn't quite exist, because really player devices are used what I call more in a live situation. So yeah, it still has its usage. So I'm just looking down this stack to see if there's anything else worth talking on this particular stack. Again, I've got another resonance at the end of there. Oh, I'm taking this data, putting it through a MIDI converter, swapping it over to this MIDI converter. I am using this Euclideum here to drive more cowbells. I'm afraid to say more cowbells for most of you guys is just one of them devices which isn't going to exist for you, because I don't believe it's in the shop anymore. And down here I've got a bass sound going on here. So this is a bass sound, and again, it's a very, very basic patch which I've set up, a very, very basic one, but I am using the velocity to affect the dampening, and the dampening does actually have quite an effect on it, and you'll hear this. This is a bass sound, and you'll actually hear when that dampening kicks in, it gives a nice little twang sound. And basically, I've got to say, some very basic data which I'm putting through compulsion, just using compulsion to break that up into a little bit more rhythmic sort of feel. And as I say, I'm using the velocity data from compulsion to make this twang. So let's quickly look how I can select different buttons on my hardware controller. So I'm going to select my different buttons, and I'm actually going to select different patterns. So what I've got, obviously I've got my Nectar at the moment wired up, and I'm wired up to my mod panel. So most people have got buttons on their controller should be able to wire up to a mod panel. So as I'm selecting my different buttons, you can see them highlight and select a momentary button within the mod panel. The mod panel itself is then wired up to the trigger. Oops, I'm on the wrong screen. Let me click over here, get on the right screen. There we go. It's wired up to this trigger multiplexer. So we quickly whiz around to the back and zoom in. He says, "Whoa." It's going to get a bit busy on the screen. So yeah, so each of the outputs simply going in, so I'm then converting them into a note. So these buttons here have been converted into a note. If your controller can output notes directly, you can actually skip a few of these steps. Or if you're quite happy to use your keyboard, you can skip a few steps as well. I just like to use my keyboards as keyboards and my controllers as controllers. So I'm not skipping this step. The output from this is then actually being fed back into itself. So I'm then taking note and gate CV data, what the trigger multiplexer is generating, pushing it back into the combinator. And that in turn will come down and talk to, hey, here's my CV8X4 and my select CV switch combo. I'm then taking that data because the select CV switch can be controlled via MIDI data. And as you see, as I press my buttons, I'm changing my different ports. These ports are usually controlled by a knob. So as you turn the knob, you switch between your different your different ports. But I've now converted it so I can actually just click each of these, and then really it's whatever you want now, because this is a voltage stepper, I can control whatever I want, and I just happen to be controlling, as I say, this player device. So as you can see, if I press number 4 button, we get pattern number 4. So we can just quickly swizz around, and we can play each of these devices very easily and switch between them. As I say, very, very straightforward, just using a few of these devices, and you can obviously use that for many, many other things as well. So what we've got going on here, as I say, we've got a few bits of data playing another bit of data. We've got some drum stuff going on here, which is playing Voltage Modular. And we've got a little bit of a bass stuff going down there. So what I'm actually going to do is just say I'm going to play this out. As I say, I think their devices are worth having a look at. I know I haven't covered absolutely every single bit of all their devices, and as I say, this was just a quick overview. And as I say, the stuff's on sale, so it's definitely worth having an investigation at this point in time. So thank you for watching, and bye for now.